That's Mom. It's her going into the house.
She walks in, that was it.
A mom is missing. This beautiful blonde, very young and vivacious woman.
Everybody was starting to reach out, and nobody had heard from her.
I tried to message her, I've tried to call her on Messenger.
Police had to look at those facts and say she could just be off the grid right now.
We don't have a crime scene. We don't have an obvious crime.
There's no body, there's no murder weapon.
Right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something. What the hell did we just watch?
Billings, Montana, 2018. The fiercely independent city on the edge of the Rocky Mountains is in the middle of an economic boom. It's here that 49-year-old Laura Johnson has come to experience her own independence after years of raising her children.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably the best picture of my mom. All I know is my mom got some 80s hair going on, and my dad actually has a full set of hair. Seeing all of us as an actual family, holy smokes.
Laura grew up in Vancouver, Washington, and met her future husband Howard there when she was 18.
By the time my mom was 23, she had 5 boys. She loved the fact that she was a mother. She always told us, I would never regret having all of you kids. She was extremely loving, and she was amazingly funny as well, and she gets that from her dad, who's just a jokester at every turn.
She was a wonderful mom, always helped with everything, always treated everybody like their family.
My dad worked the regular 9 to 5. Mom stayed at home, raised the kids. She was very nurturing.
She did everything. Every night she'd cook dinner. And for the amount of people that we had, I felt like it was a lot, but she made it look always easy, so.
She always made it a deal to have a good meal. Big old feast. My entire career has been in food service, and that's mostly due to the fact that I grew up cooking in the kitchen with my mom.
But in 2012, their children grown and out of the house, Laura and her husband Howard separate, and Laura moves to the Las Vegas, Nevada area.
I definitely think she wanted to find her own sense of happiness. You know, a woman in her 40s having that for the first time, that's got to be empowering, you know what I mean? So she did tell me that she had joined a dating app.
And it isn't long before Laura meets someone she really likes. His name is Greg Green.
Greg was one of the people who she was matched with. He worked in Vegas right there. They went out on a couple of dates, and then it went to the point where she was living with him in Nevada.
Although she now lives 1,000 miles away from her family in Vancouver, Washington, Laura keeps in regular touch with her sons.
My mom was never really good about keeping a cell phone. So our main points of communication were Facebook.
She was consistently on Facebook. Like, you can click on Messenger and her little thing would be green.
In July of 2018, Greg Green gets a job in Billings, Montana. Laura follows him there in August, and soon after, she lands a job at a Papa John's restaurant. After her first day at work, Laura calls her son, Stephen.
I remember the last time that I talked to her on the phone was when she was driving home. It was literally just, talk to each other, see how life's going, have some laughs. But it's not until you look back, you wish you did more with your time, you know?
On September 18th, 2018, Laura's sons become concerned that she's stopped communicating with them.
My older brother, Howard Jr., he spoke to my mom every day. He called me and said, "Hey, have you guys heard from Mom?" And I haven't heard from her. I looked on Facebook. It said that she hadn't been active for a couple days. So then I called Steven. I was like, "Hey, have you talked to Mom?"
Jonathan called me on the 18th. The fact that Jonathan had even called me in the first place was a huge red flag. Because if there was a way to get a hold of her, he totally could have, you know what I mean? But now he's at the point to where he's like, I need help. I called my mom, and every time the phone was straight to voicemail. I've tried messaging her, I've tried to call her on Messenger, I've tried to call a job, and the job is just like, yeah, she hasn't shown up for work since September 13th. Like all of this, and I'm coming up with nothing.
Nobody had heard from her.
I called Greg. He picked up. He says, came home from work on the 13th, and she was gone. All of her stuff's gone. All of it. I don't know anything. He doesn't know where she is.
September 24th, 2018. Laura's sons have been trying to reach her for 6 days.
So then I started calling the police department out there.
We asked the Billings, Montana Police Department to do welfare checks.
Officers went to Miss Johnson's residence to attempt to make contact and speak with her. The gate was locked. There was 2 large dogs in the yard. They weren't friendly. The house was quiet. And they weren't able to make any contact. Officers went to Miss Johnson's work and was advised that her last day of work was on the 13th and she had not been to work since then.
Detectives tracked down her boyfriend, Greg.
When officers spoke with Gregory, he told them that on the 13th he had gone to work. And when he returned that day, he found that she was gone and she had packed her 2 red suitcases that she had brought with her and had left. The majority of people that contact police departments looking for their loved ones or wanting welfare checks done, those people are found eventually. You know, maybe they did go on a vacation and they didn't tell somebody. I think a lot of people, with the fast-paced life that we have, people want to take a break, they want to disconnect from life, and that can be something you have to take into consideration when looking for people.
What the law enforcement officers told me was, you are telling us that she's missing. We're not saying wrong, but we don't have enough information to say that you're right. The fact that it was a grown woman, people believe that if they aren't being found, it's because they don't want to be found. And anybody who knows my mom in this situation know that that's fundamentally not true. So the sense of like, something's happened became very real.
It's been 13 days since anyone has had any contact with Laura, and her family is getting anxious.
I posted a picture of my mom, and he said, "We have not heard from my mom." And just to explain the situation, a lot of people commented on there.
The post was getting a ton of shares. I thought that the whole thing was just strange. The fact that, her sons haven't heard from her. We don't know where she is. She hasn't showed up to her job yet. She's not responding to text messages. The first thing that I do when I see something like that is I do reach out to law enforcement.
September 27th of 2018, I did receive a call from one of the local reporters regarding a Facebook post involving Laura Johnson. So the next thing I did after I got off the phone was started to research the case. While we haven't reached the level that there was a crime committed, things were starting to fall in place that not everything was right.
Investigators find baffling clues in Laura's disappearance.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
And learn of a troubling past.
She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
I'm not just going to sit here. So the next logical step was to go to Montana.
September 27th, 2018. Laura Johnson's family has not heard from her in 2 weeks. Her boyfriend, Greg Green, tells police he hasn't seen her since September 13th, which was also the last day she was at work.
At this point, it's still unknown where she's at, unknown if there's foul play involved. We just had not gotten any information conclusive one way or the other.
Police ask Laura's son, Stephen, if there is anything going on in her life they should know about. Stephen tells them that years before, she was injured and that she became addicted to prescription painkillers. But at the time of her disappearance, she was getting treatment and doing well.
There was a feeling that potentially she may have relapsed due to her addiction.
Police had to look at those facts and say, well, she does have a history of use. She had a prior addiction, and she could just be off the grid right now.
Detectives reach out to the clinic where Laura has been going for treatment.
The clinic advised me that she had been there every single day for 3 weeks prior to the 13th.
If Laura has relapsed, detectives know she could be in hiding somewhere. They go back to Greg Green, hoping he can help focus the search. But he doesn't have anything to add to his previous statement that Laura had moved out on September 13th, and he hasn't seen her since.
He was quite cooperative. He consented to a search of his home. Officers didn't locate any items that they thought were suspicious at that time. And Gregory had allowed them to look through his phone, which he showed them some messages that he had sent to Laura after she had left.
We don't have an obvious crime. We just know that she's been missing.
Investigators subpoena Laura's phone records, and when the data comes in, there's a glimmer of hope that Laura is alive and well.
There was a recent phone ping from Washington that showed that the phone had been there on September 26th.
Detectives wonder if Laura went back to her hometown of Vancouver, Washington, where her sons and ex-husband live.
From an investigative standpoint, it made sense because that's where some of her support network would be.
Sergeant Billings called and said, I got some great news for you. I was like, oh, she did show up in town. I got excited.
Laura's sons immediately start searching all over Vancouver for her.
Me and my wife drove around for 2 hours to every business that was open, showing pictures of my mom, asking if anybody had seen her. So I was like, if she's in town, she's obviously would be at one of the hotels for sure. None of the hotels are like, nope, haven't seen her. Nobody's seen her. Not a single person.
Laura's sons are disappointed that there is no sign of her. Then they get disturbing news. The investigators made a mistake when tracking Laura's phone.
When they pinged my mom's phone, they pinged the last incoming call, and it was my dad. And it was on his birthday, because he spoke to my mom every year on his birthday. He knew everything that was going on, and he's like, well, it's my birthday, so hopefully she answers.
Laura never answered that call, and detectives realized that she was never in Vancouver. It's been 18 days since Laura Johnson disappeared, and her son Stephen decides he has to take action.
And being all the way in Washington and realizing that I wasn't going to get an answer, that was the next logical step, was to go to Montana. I was like, I'm not just going to sit here.
I couldn't let him go alone.
They said to themselves, we're going to just get in the car and we're going to drive 14 hours over to Billings and we're just going to go look for her ourselves.
So the first place that we went was the police station. And what they tell us is, as long as I didn't break the law, I could do anything. I had inclinations about who the person Greg was, and none of that ever sat right with me.
Stephen calls Greg, looking for more details about the last time he saw his mother.
He picked up, it was him. You know, who are you? What is this? Hangs up the phone. So I went to his house. I was yelling my mom's name. I'm yelling Laura. I'm yelling Mom. I think that she's in there. And then that's when he lets the dogs out. So I go up to the dogs, and they're loud, but they're not dangerous at all. So I just bent down and started petting the dog, you know. And that's when he came out of the trailer and lights a cigarette, and he's, you know, can I help you? And I tell him, I was like, I'm Stephen Johnson. Like, Laura's my mother. I believe you know where she is, and I would like you to tell me. And he's like, no, I came home, and she was gone. He's very cocky. He's just standing there smoking his cigarette. So I told him, I believe you know where my mother is. I will be the one to put you behind bars, and I'll be the end of you. So he tells me to leave, and he calls the cops on me.
October 1st, 2018. Stephen Johnson has driven from his home in Vancouver, Washington to Billings, Montana to try to find his missing mother, Laura. After a disturbing encounter with Laura's boyfriend, Greg Green, Stephen's next step is to create flyers and post them all over Billings.
When we went anywhere, we handed these out. So we went to Greg's work, and we put them all over his window at work, and then he tore them all off.
We were like texting, we're like, all right, has anybody heard? Like, we want to know, like, what's going on?
We woke up 8 o'clock every single morning with a place to go to, an idea in mind, with somebody to talk to just try to find something. So at the end of every day, I'm calling my brothers, telling them, here's what we did. Here's who we talked to.
It was very frustrating because this is like what you see on TV. I never thought in my life I would ever go through it.
One of the hardest things for me was dealing with the frustrations with the family, understanding their concerns, understanding their desire to have, swift justice.
We can't just go to Mr. Green's residence and knock the door in and do a search without a warrant. We've got proper legal procedure. And at that time, we were lacking enough information to use the search warrant process in order to further develop Ms. Johnson's case.
It was frustrating not being able to get a real reaction. So it just felt like our duty to prove it.
We've talked to everybody who we can. We've been to the doctor's office. We've been to the Salvation Army. Everything comes up empty. We had gone through every single dead end. We had been through all of Greg's neighbors with no answer, with no solution. We were nowhere closer on day 5 than we were on day 1. And the last thing before we leave town that we figure we can do is go knock on the neighbors' houses again.
As they are knocking on the door of the neighbor across the street from Greg, Stephen sees something he hadn't noticed before.
I basically stopped and I said, "Hey, I think we found something. There is a camera at the one place that we're interested in."
It points right at the driveway of where Greg and Laura lived.
Stephen and Casey had talked to the owner a few days before. Now, they ring his doorbell again, hoping to get access to the footage.
And the first thing he says is, "Do you want to see?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "I have my camera footage pulled up because you were asking me about your mom." He invites me in, and for the next 35 minutes, I'm just on his floor looking at a bunch of video. So the first thing we pull up is September 13th, the last day she went to work. And then Casey's recording it on her phone. You could speed it up. So we're going through. So we're watching the camera footage. And then this is where it gets very interesting. It's him. Right here.
Keep playing.
What happens is Greg gets home first. Greg gets home and parks his truck and goes inside. And 35 minutes later, right here. Oh! My mom gets home. Right there. So, it's mom.
Blonde hair.
It is 7:07 on September 13th.
God looks excited
That's
to
her.
see her.
It's her going into the house. We were told time and time again that Greg's story is, I came home and she was gone. I came home and she was gone. She had taken all of her stuff and it was gone. So we got him. He was lying. But, well, where is she? So we're watching the footage. Day turns to night.
What time is it?
Right now,
11:27? 10:27?
10:27.
There he is. The headlamp?
Headlamp on. We see Greg throughout the entire night. Right here.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like he's dragging something back. Just moving. Going back and forth between the house.
That's when we call the detectives, like, you need to come see this.
Stephen Johnson has discovered home security footage of his missing mother, Laura. It shows her at the house she shared with Greg Green after the time Greg told police she had left. Realizing the importance of the discovery, he calls the police.
Approximately 11:15 that night, I go to that neighbor's house and we watch the footage in question. We then start viewing the video in greater detail. And it was definitely very concerning.
The detective's trained eye spots something that Stephen and Casey missed.
The footage shows the area of the driveway where Laura Johnson is observed coming home that evening, and she's exiting the vehicle and walking toward the trailer. Gregory, he's also seen going back into the garage and coming out with 2 red-colored suitcases in that vehicle as well.
the same 2 red suitcases that Greg told officers that Laura had taken with her when she moved out. And then, the detective sees something that changes the investigation from a missing persons case to something much more disturbing.
And you can see him walking out with that large, heavy object. That's zoomed in to show that area of the vehicle where he puts what we believe is Laura's body into the vehicle. And then ultimately he's observed putting a shovel in the back of the pickup bed before he leaves that evening just after 7 p.m. We believe that more than likely that is her body, but we need a lot more evidence to prove that at this point. That was kind of a gut-wrenching feeling to know that you just observed somebody's last moments.
What the hell did we just watch? The only logical answer is, Greg ended my mother's life that night. And finally dawns on me, after all of this, that I'll probably never get to see my mom again. Is that I'll never get another goodbye. I'll never get that closure. I'll never get the last I love you. I'll never get any of it. It's just gone.
But unless police can prove that it is Laura's body on the video, they don't have a crime. On October 5th, 3 weeks since Laura was last seen, Billings police asked Greg to come into the station for questioning.
Gregory told us what he had initially told officers. He told us that on the 13th, when he got home that evening, she was gone and her 2 red suitcases were gone.
In that video, it shows Greg pulling those suitcases out of the house and packing them up in his truck.
He seemed very surprised when we told him that there was video, and then he decided that he didn't want to talk to us anymore. We informed him that he was not going to be allowed to go back to his home. We believed that that was a crime scene at this point. The vehicle he drove to the police department was impounded at that point.
We have now crossed into full-on criminal investigation. We do believe a crime has committed.
We had probable cause at that point to seek a search warrant for his residence. But we didn't have enough information to that point to make an arrest. We executed that search warrant that evening and began to process the trailer where Gregory and Laura lived. One of the first things that we noted was the strong odor of new carpet smell. In the back room of Gregory's home, it was obvious that the carpet had been replaced very recently, and that was suspicious to us.
But because police find no proof that Laura is dead, they have to release Greg.
At this point, we still don't have a body. We still haven't located Miss Johnson. There was not enough to arrest Mr. Green for the disappearance of Miss Johnson.
It's a crushing blow to the family.
After them basically telling him, hey, we know you're lying, they let him go.
The entire family was, really upset. Because you have all this video, but you don't arrest him. Why?
There's a lot of frustration, but I would say it was mainly based around, this guy did all of this, and we could just see right through him.
We work closely with the county attorney's office and trying to determine, what more we need to get to that point to make an arrest. I had to remain focused on what needed to be done to build a case against him.
While the forensics team examines Greg's seized work truck, detectives have a strategy to keep an eye on Greg.
One of the last things we did when we searched the residence is we placed a tracker on his vehicle. We believe that he did more than likely take Laura's body to some location to bury her. We placed the tracker on with the hope of he might go back out to the location.
The tracker is placed on Greg's personal car, the same one that Laura is seen driving on surveillance video on September 13th. On October 5th, hours after his interview with detectives, Greg Green starts to move.
And at approximately 10 p.m. that evening, his vehicle started to move towards the interstate, heading west outside of Billings. So we began to follow him. He drove straight through the night, and we realized that he was leaving the state.
October 5th, 2018. Greg Green is the prime suspect in the presumed murder of Laura Johnson. Lacking evidence of a crime, detectives have to let Greg walk free. But they have placed a tracker on his car, and he appears to be leaving Billings, Montana, in a hurry.
His vehicle started to move towards the interstate and heading west outside of Billings.
Detectives track Greg as he drives for 16 hours across 5 states to his old hometown in Henderson, Nevada.
If you're being interviewed by police about the whereabouts of your ex-girlfriend and you just hightail it out of town, it's not a good look.
We were coordinating with law enforcement where he was at. They knew that we were tracking him. They would do drive-bys, make sure that we knew his whereabouts.
Meanwhile, Billings police continued the search for evidence to arrest Greg. Using his cell phone data, they track Greg's movements during the night of September 13th, which leads them to the local Walmart.
We were able to locate footage of him going to Walmart that evening. And when he went through the self-checkout, we did see a very distinct abrasion on his face, which we thought was very suspicious at that point.
Then, another crucial piece of evidence emerges from the forensic search of Greg's impounded work truck.
I noticed that the vehicle was very clean. It had been washed recently. So after 2 days processing that vehicle for biological material, taking swabs from various locations on the seat, we found 3 very, very small 1 to 2 millimeter stains that appeared to be blood.
That evidence came back from the crime lab, and sure enough, it was Laura's blood.
The totality of all of the evidence that we had located, including the blood on the door of that truck, and together with video footage showing him carrying out what we believed was Laura's body, at that point there was enough evidence to arrest him.
Hey, Greg. I remember you. You remember us? Alright. So you know why we're here? I imagine so, yes. Okay. So, something changed or something like this, or? Well, we have a warrant for your arrest for deliberate homicide, so that's what's changed. That's why you're here in handcuffs. Okay. And you'll be expected back to Billings. Huh. For deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Deliberate homicide. Did you want to tell us what happened with her when she came home that night
And what you did with her, that's your decision. I'm not going to press you. That's what I want to know.
I did everything that I know already.
Okay, well, we both know that's not true. So if you don't want to talk to me, we'll end that there. Okay?
After being held for 7 months in a Nevada jail, Greg is extradited to Billings. More than a year later, in February 2020, his trial is set to begin. But without Laura Johnson's body, a conviction is far from a sure thing.
We had a theory of what we believed happened, but we just didn't have a body. This is the very first case that I've ever had that involves a no-body homicide arrest. When you're trying to convict somebody of deliberate homicide and you don't have a body to go along with that, it can be very stressful.
What is your evidence? Can you really make it stick?
Drugs, surveillance video, and murder. Testimony begins in the trial of a Billings man accused of killing Laura Johnson.
We sat right behind him the entire time. I was not happy at all.
He was not taking anything seriously. I don't know if he was just in disbelief, like this is really happening, so he just kind of like went numb to it.
He maintained his innocence the entire time, even though there was video being played in the courtroom of him carrying what appeared to be Laura's body out of his house.
The evidence in this case will show you that the defendant took great lengths to cover up his murder of his girlfriend, Laura.
Prosecutors present jurors with a possible motive for the brutal murder. Laura was about to permanently end her rocky relationship with Greg.
One of the things we did learn from the trial was she had moved into a separate bedroom and she was saving money to try to leave.
He acted like he was at home sitting on his couch. And yeah, he didn't care whatsoever. He thought he was like at home watching Netflix or something.
He knew exactly where the cameras were from news media. There was a moment where he turned around, looked into the lens of our camera, and gave a little smile.
Greg's behavior at the trial only adds to the heartbreak felt by Laura's family.
That if this situation didn't happen, like I could have had my mom back. She would have been living in my town. She would have been. She would have been here. It's not fair.
How will this trial pan out without evidence of Laura Johnson's body?
This case has had so many unanswered questions. It's had so much heartache with it. And there's no body, there's no murder weapon, there's no evidence that shows he actually killed her.
Two years after Laura Johnson's final moments were captured by a home security camera, a jury in Billings, Montana is set to decide whether her boyfriend, Greg Green, is guilty of murder.
This trial lasted, 2 weeks? Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day. Didn't leave that city hall building for 2 weeks, basically.
That footage was the critical piece in the investigation and in the trial. It was a piece of evidence that the jury actually got to take back with them to deliberations, to view.
You can't escape the silent witness. You can't escape that video surveillance.
Any person with common sense to see all the evidence, and especially the video, would know he was guilty. I just got home the day before, and Steven called and said, hey, they have a verdict already. We're headed back.
The jury was out maybe 2 hours.
You don't know. put 12 people in a room to make a decision and hope it's the right one.
To the charge of deliberate homicide. Guilty.
Ultimately, he was convicted of deliberate homicide. And he received a sentence of 100 years in the Montana State Prison.
In my 16-year career, this is the first case I've been involved in that went from a welfare check to a missing persons to a homicide without a body to a even prosecution of a homicide without a body.
And the fact that the contribution that we had was as impactful as it was, that's where the bittersweet part comes, you know? Had to extend ourselves that much.
Go through something you could never prepare yourself for.
Exactly.
If he didn't do that, then we would still be searching.
One of the key pivotal moments here was the persistence from family. And then Ms. Johnson's son coming to Billings and locating the surveillance footage. And I can only speculate, if that video had not been located or recovered, I'm not sure where we would be now.
Today, Stephen and his brothers are focused on keeping their mother's memory alive.
My mom was a part of my life every single day. I got married last year to my beautiful wife, Casey here. We had our daughter, Eliza, and Eliza's middle name is my mother's name. So her name is Eliza Laura Johnson. Big part of how my mom was as an everyday mother is the ways that I've been able to cope with her loss. So making the meals that she made, having the family dinners, you know, bringing her into my life in those little ways to keep her alive. That's what I do. She's there every time I make dinner, you know.
The only thing I have that I can hear her voice now is April 2018. She called me, but I was at work, and she left me a voicemail to tell me happy birthday. That's the only thing I have to hear her voice.
We still have the fact that we don't know where my mother lies to this day. That we have not been able to bring her home. We haven't had the sense of closure for peace. There's been no funeral, there's been no memorial, there's been nothing. If there's anything that anybody can tell.
It is so risky trying to make a living with art, but Jordy was compelled to create.
Jordy was always chill. I've never seen her upset, but towards the end, you could see the darker stuff come out.
When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong. It was enough to drive her to file a missing persons report.
I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap.
We want to talk to you about it, get your side of everything.
We were just horrified something like this could happen to somebody like Jordy.
Once I made the connection with the glasses being hers, I started thinking that there's a lot more to this than just a missing person.
Your fear is you're not going to find her alive.
Spring 2016, St. Augustine, Florida. A picturesque seaside town with a thriving art community. Jordy Hudson is in her element, fresh off a successful art show.
She stood out from everybody else. She was always into what her passion was, art. Me liking art and her being an artist, I kind of looked up to Jordy. Always nice, genuine person. way chill, way mellow.
Her work was different than most anything I'd ever seen. It was very visceral. Jordy put her heart and soul into it.
It was real, and it was genuine and original.
Jordy came from a family of artists, and from an early age had a strong persona.
She was just one of those people that just was very confrontational. It was evident in her personality, it was evident in her art.
She was tattooed, she was real punk looking.
She was always on the fringe. She was always out to make a statement. A leader, never a follower.
In 1985, at just 15 years old, Jordy attends the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. After that, the School of the Museum of Arts in Boston. And by her early 20s, her art is exhibited in galleries across the country.
It is so risky to try to make a living with art. But Jordy was compelled to create.
But Jordy's success is not without its struggles.
Jordy had meningitis, and possibly as far back as her college days. She had issues of lightheadedness. She had some serious muscular problems to the point where she literally could not walk or talk.
Jordy was sick for a long time. I knew that she was on some type of medication.
In 2012, when Jordy is 42, she moves from Milledgeville, Georgia, to an apartment in St. Augustine, Florida, to be closer to her mother, Judy.
Jordy's mother was a big support for her. Her mother was her caretaker, driving her around and handling her medications, which were numerous.
St. Augustine turns out to be the perfect place for Jordy to continue working on her art.
It literally is an artist's hangout. It has quite a vibe to it.
St. Augustine's always been a pretty artsy town. Way back when, there was a kind of a big hippie scene.
In late summer 2012, Jordy's success hits a setback after her health takes a near fatal turn.
She could not speak that clearly. She talked about having had dizzy spells. She was having to use a cane at some point, so she was having a very difficult time with this meningitis. Her illness brought out some rawness, some real heart, real emotion in her artwork.
She put her illness into her work. You could see the darker stuff come out, and it stuck out. And I believe that's because of her illness. Jordy only mentioned her illness 1 or 2 times throughout the time I knew her. She wouldn't let that hold her down.
I just think that her having this fatal disease couldn't help but influence her. I own a gallery called Space 8 here in St. Augustine, and I gave Jordy her show in 2012. That whole exhibition was under the context of her dying soon, like very soon. In advance of the show, we always get media coverage, and at the time, there's a publication called Folio magazine. They were sent to cover her and talk about her art.
Very first meeting, Jordy was one of those people that was memorable in so many ways. I photographed Jordy at her studio. She was in bad shape. They're not pleasant, happy photos. She was in a difficult time of her life, so we tried to reflect that. This cover shot, I didn't direct her. She was so good in front of the camera, and she would just bare her soul to me. She was a dream subject, somebody that wears their feelings on their sleeve out for all to see.
She had a teardrop tattoo under one eye. That was the only tear that could come out of that eye because she had no more tear duct. Just sad.
It's so striking that it was hard to take a photo that didn't mean something when you take a photo of Jordy. She was a very genuine and heartfelt person. When I was leaving, she said she wanted to give me a gift. She insisted that I take this medallion and do treasure it still.
This issue of Folio Weekly is released in November 2012. Jordy's friends and family believe this will be her final art show.
Because we got so much press and because the story was so unique and compelling, it drew a big crowd. people were very excited about it. She was literally on her deathbed leading up to the show, during the exhibition. And I think it was just really emotional for her to get the acknowledgement for her art, not her, illness.
And soon, perhaps motivated by the show and the feature, Jordy's health improves.
It had gone into remission. I remember being surprised. I'm being, happy that she beat it.
Over the years with Jordy, we would run into each other, would talk, and it's normally only about our art.
Here's an artist who apparently was recovering, who was getting stronger. She was back on the upswing.
She had that attitude that I'm totally comfortable with what we're doing, and she was great.
Jordy was just thriving and creating art and in not letting her illness drive her.
On Monday, April 11th, 2016, Jordy doesn't show up for her weekly visit with her mother, Judy. That causes Judy to become concerned.
Jordy Hudson would stop by her mother's place on a regular basis to pick up a stipend for rent or for food. When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong.
When 3 days go by with no word from Jordy, Judy contacts the St. Augustine police.
At first, we weren't really concerned. We get calls all the time. My wife didn't show back up home. She hasn't been home all weekend. And come Monday, she shows back up because she's, been out partying.
I wasn't sure if she was just hanging out at someone's house, never came home.
But with these kind of investigations, we have to turn over every rock. We started looking at police reports and hospitals to locate Jordy.
The day Judy reports Jordy missing, Sergeant Etheridge responds to an unrelated call at 88 Cedar Street in St. Augustine.
The homeowner had called and said he had seen somebody's personal effects in his driveway, some blood on the sidewalk, and he wanted to make sure that nothing had occurred, that no one was hurt or injured.
When I went up there, I started talking to the homeowner. He showed me a pair of glasses, and where the blood drops were, they were right on the edge of out by the road on the driveway, close to the fence. Took, some samples for evidence, just in case something came up of it at a later time. I went and collected the pair of glasses and brought it back to the police department.
When he returns, Sergeant Etheridge continues reviewing Jordy's case and makes a disturbing connection thanks to the photo of Jordy that Judy had given to the police department.
The photo she provided had Jordy in dark frame glasses.
I scrutinized the photos a little bit more. I was able to see the hinge on the glasses detailed, and I compared them to what I had in my hand, and it was a dead ringer for the glasses in her photo. Once I made the connection with the glasses being hers, I started thinking there's a lot more to this than just a missing persons.
We're thinking maybe she had gotten into a scuffle, something like that had possibly occurred.
Investigators work to identify Jordy's final moments.
I watched the video surveillance. I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, and that was our first break.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. No idea that would have been the last time.
And using every tool in their arsenal, they focus on finding answers.
There was video surveillance directly in the area where the blood was located. How did we get so lucky?
It was when we showed her the picture, and she realized that we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
The day Jordy Hudson is reported missing, detectives have discovered her glasses in the yard of a home in St. Augustine, Florida.
Myself and Detective Wachkow went back out to 88 Cedar Street and started really doing a lot of more detailed search.
Not too long into the search, we discovered a large amount of blood in the bushes.
It was a significant amount of blood. But it wasn't just somebody tripped and fell. It was a lot of arterial spray on the bamboo, on the fence, and, puddles of blood.
There was enough blood that we realized something definitely bad had happened to Jordy. I was starting to look through the underbrush. As I was moving it apart with my hands, I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap. One of the first things that we did is we went to Jordy's house. I looked around to see, was there a struggle? Did something happen? Is furniture overturned? To see if any items are missing. But nothing seemed out of place.
As detectives are leaving Jordy's home, they run into her neighbor, Fred Stanley.
While we were at Jordy Hudson's house, Fred Stanley was trying to get our attention. We walked out to him, started talking to him. We asked him, hey, when's the last time you've seen Miss Hudson? And he goes, well, we were at the Giggling Gator bar the prior weekend, which was the 9th of April. She was supposed to show up at her mom's house the Monday after the time she was at the Giggling Gator, and she never showed up. That, in turn, led us to go to the Giggling Gator and try to get video that night of who she was talking with, who she might have left with, and just any information that could show us where she might be.
Detectives head straight to the Giggling Gator, which is just half a mile from 88 Cedar Street, where police located Jordy's glasses and the knife the day after she went missing.
The Giggling Gator is basically like a dive bar. We've been there for just various, calls for service, fights, or whatever.
I worked at the Gator off and on for about 12 years. We do get a lot of tourists, but at the end of the night, it's usually people we already know. The police. I was at work, and they came in and said Jordy was missing. You feel worried. And you wonder, if they're safe or not. The next question is, what's your involvement with Jordy? I'm just a bartender, and she's a patron.
With any investigation, one of the first things we start looking for is video surveillance. And I personally knew the Giggling Gator had a lot of video surveillance from previous cases that I'd worked.
The detectives are in luck. They're met with a treasure trove of video. They scroll back in time to Saturday, April 9th, hoping the video will shed light on Jordy that night.
There was no audio with the video surveillance from the Giggling Gator, so we have to try and put our mind in interpreting what the video is telling us.
The Giggling Gator was a little bit hectic. I noticed a couple of males that were in the back of the bar arguing.
They continue scanning through the video second by second. At 1:36 a.m., they spot Jordy. And she is wearing the glasses police found at 88 Cedar Street.
I was working that night, and she came in. She said hello. First thing I asked, how you doing? What can I get you? You could tell that her spirit was up. Jordy was having a decent night, a good night.
They also see Fred Stanley, her neighbor.
I could see Jordy come into the bar and that Fred was following her in. They ended up hanging out, having a couple of shots. And after a while, it looked like they got into a verbal argument. And Jordy seemed very upset and agitated.
You're just trying to figure out what was the incident between Mr. Stanley and Jordy?
It kind of looked like Fred was trying to get her to leave and she didn't want to go. Eventually, Fred left the bar and Jordy stayed and continued to have a couple more shots.
The argument caught on video leads detectives to wonder whether Jordy's neighbor, Fred Stanley, may be responsible for her disappearance.
We watch Fred leave the bar and walk down the street. He was never in any of the other video surveillance that would indicate he came back to do anything to Jordy.
By looking at the video, you can eliminate people or you can include people. And in this case, with Mr. Stanley, it excluded him.
Jose tells investigators he didn't notice anything unusual inside the bar that night.
Remember actually taking a break or have a cigarette. Jordy explained her new pieces and stuff. She did mention, like, some of my stuff could be dark. She asked questions like, are you into that type of work? And I told her I'm very open-minded. Just have to see it and see if I like it or not. So I remember when I said that, she smiled and she said, that's cool. Maybe you should come check out my new work. That's when I agreed to do it. You know, like, okay.
Jose doesn't know that these will be his final moments with his friend.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. I just remember her saying, I'm going to go hang out with some people. I expected to see her later on that week. No idea that would have been the last time.
As the detectives continue watching surveillance footage, something catches their eyes.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, a large male and a couple other guys taking their shirts off like they were going to fight.
I remember there was an altercation. There was an incident with two guys outside that I had to take care of. The bigger guy, I remember grabbing him and, you know, giving him a bear hug and trying to pull him back. He was a little bit bigger than me, intimidating. You know, the tattoos, the size of them. It was the first time and last time I saw that guy.
The large male was covered in tattoos. One was a big giant sword and head tattoos. After that fight kind of dispersed is when you see Jordy walk outside and begin conversing with this large white male with the tattoos.
They didn't seem like they were having issues, Jordy and the male. We noticed two of the males walk off with her.
The glasses were on her face when she left the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then as of Monday morning, those glasses were in the driveway next to blood.
Whoever the men seen walking off with Jordy are, they are now suspects in her disappearance.
I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, that something had happened, and that was our first break.
Your fear is you're not going to find her alive.
On April 15th, 2016, a day after Jordy Hudson's mother reported her missing, investigators have found surveillance video of her leaving the Giggling Gator bar with two unidentified men.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, and we saw her leaving with those two individuals.
Watching the video surveillance, I knew Jordy, but nobody else had a name. I had no clue how we were going to figure that out. It's during the time that I'm watching the video surveillance that one of the bartenders says he recognizes one of the males and knows his name, Trinity Boykin. Trinity had gotten into the fight with the man that Jordy had left with. Trinity was not a suspect only because we saw Trinity leave, and he didn't leave with Jordy. So when the bartender told me that he knew Trinity Boykin from the video surveillance, that was my first clue that, okay, maybe he can have some other names for the other subjects. My goal at that point was to get him in to talk to him. When I ran Trinity through our police database, I had his information, his telephone number.
Detective Ochkai contacts Trinity and asks him to come in the following day for an interview.
So when Trinity comes in for the interview, we told him, you're possibly a witness and we just want to know the information that you know. He tells me that he had a history with Harry, which was the guy's name that he gave us.
Trinity does not know Harry's last name.
He tells me that they ended up arguing over an ex of Harry's that Trinity was now friends with. Trinity didn't like the way that Harry had treated her, and so it came to blows outside. But he says, I left and I haven't seen Harry since. So at that point, we just start figuring out a way we can find Harry. This is somebody that we needed to track down and talk to.
As they work on identifying Harry, investigators are also trying to learn more about Jordy's movements on the night she disappeared.
At this point, we decide to look to see if we could find more video surveillance of Jordy after she left the Giggling Gator.
We weren't sure where they went, but we had some idea because the investigators had found blood on the scene on Cedar Street.
We hit every road and house in that neighborhood looking for video to see if we can see them.
There's a lot of bed and breakfasts back there because there's some historic homes. If you had a B&B, you certainly would have had some security.
One of the Airbnbs had a pretty good video surveillance system that had night vision that was pointed pretty much directly in the area where the blood was located. We were like, how did we get so lucky?
Investigators immediately begin reviewing the footage, hoping it will show what happened to Jordy on the night of April 9th.
It's very time consuming because you're watching the video frame by frame, minute by minute, at the same time as it's actually live. You don't want to speed through it because you could miss something.
Though the footage is grainy, they spot two individuals walking down Cedar Street at nearly 3 a.m., shortly after Jordy left the Giggling Gator.
When we picked them up on video, that third subject was no longer with them, and it would just appear to be Jordy and this large white male with tattoos on Cedar Street.
Two people got to one spot. You can clearly see them walking down the street. You're like, okay, this is going to get me somewhere good. We're getting closer to it, finding out what happened on Cedar Street.
They're talking, and then at one point, they were walking down into more shadows across the street where we located the blood. And now they look agitated. They look upset. They look like they're arguing.
The headlights of an oncoming car illuminate what happens next.
You see what appears to be an upward motion with the male's hands as if he's stabbing the female. And the next thing you see is she's on the ground and he's dragging her body into the driveway. We had no clue that that's what we were going to recover, that it was going to actually be a video of her being stabbed and then tossed over the fence. And we were just shocked.
Detectives in St. Augustine, Florida have uncovered home security video that captures Jordy Hudson's horrific final moments.
I watched that video, and you can see him pick her up and throw her on the ground several times. And then finally, at one point, he picks her up and throws her over a little white picket fence and just walks away. Like nothing had happened. The difficult part was there's no ifs, ands, or buts in my mind. I was watching Jordy get murdered.
The police, they came and said Jordy had been murdered. That'll hit you hard. You'll stand back and look at it. I can't imagine it. It's shocking. Felt sad about her, losing her, knowing that I'm probably one of the last people to talk to Jordy. It made me think, okay, this is the last place she was at. What happened to her? Could I had maybe 5 more minutes of conversation? Could I had changed the whole night? That runs through my mind, what could I have done for this been prevented?
Well, everybody was shocked that could happen here. We were just horrified, trying to figure out how something like this could happen, especially to somebody, like Jordy. I mean, it's unthinkable that somebody could do that to somebody that's so vulnerable.
Now I need to do everything in my power to find where she is so I can at least give her mom that closure that she needs to be able to bury her daughter.
Despite the poor quality of the video, police are able to determine the man who killed Jordy is the same tattooed man who was seen leaving the bar with her.
He had a very distinct tattoo of a cross, and you can barely see it because, again, the quality of the video is not good, but it was good enough that you could see that tattoo on Cedar Street, and it matched the tattoo that he had from the Giggling Gator.
Detectives have only been able to identify the suspect as Harry and have no way to track him down. They turn back to the surveillance to see if they've missed anything.
At about 6:30 in the morning, we see a car pull up directly in front of 88 Cedar Street, and the back door opens up.
2 people exit the vehicle. Detectives recognize the first as Harry, but they can't identify the woman who is with him.
We could tell that the female that was with him was very short. She did not appear to be taller than the car.
You can tell that she's acting as the lookout.
You could see Harry lift up what we believe was Jordy over the fence and put her in the back seat of the car. He gets back in the driver's seat. The female with him gets back in the passenger seat, and they drive off heading eastbound on Cedar Street.
When the car leaves, as it drives by, you're doing everything you can to maybe get some identifiers to the vehicle. We could tell from the video that it was either dark blue in color, possibly black.
As they're watching the video, one of the detectives states he believes the car is a Nissan Versa.
We were like, there's no way. Like, we can't figure that out just by a video. And he was like, I'm telling you right now, I recognize the taillights and the headlights. It's going to be that car.
If they can identify the owner of the vehicle, it could lead them to Harry.
I'm trying to go frame by frame and get any information and get that tag number. We had a couple more tools in place that could enhance video, help us get that tag number. One of the guys that works there, he's great with video. He can do some stuff with video that's amazing. We aren't lucky enough. We were able to identify that tag number. At that point, they were able to identify a last name of somebody that owned a vehicle matching that description.
We were able to pull up the license tag.
The vehicle comes back to a woman named Judith Branson. A quick search reveals she has a son named Harry. Investigators now have their suspect's full name: Harry Branson.
After we got the last name Branson, we were able to pull Harry's police record. And fortunately for us, when somebody goes to jail, they take pictures of all their tattoos. And the one tattoo that stood out with Harry's police record was a very big cross on the front of his chest and his skull tattoos on his head.
From the size, the height, the weight, everything else with the tattoos, he was easily identifiable.
Now, knowing his name, there actually is a way we can find him.
St. Augustine police identify Harry Branson as the suspect in the murder of Jordy Hudson. They can't find him, but they do get hold of his mother, Judith.
She told us she knew nothing of what had occurred. She had woken up the next morning and her car was where it was supposed to be and she had gone to work. And all of us believed she didn't know what her son had done.
Miss Branson wasn't aware that he had taken her car, and at first she's like, no, that's not him, because we showed her a picture of him. The large tattoos all over his body and the head tattoos. And eventually she's like, yeah, that's my son, Harry. And she agreed to let us go through her car to see if we could find any evidence. We opened up the doors, and we saw a lot of reddish-brown staining that appeared to be blood. At that point, we sealed the car up, and it was transported to the evidence techs to go through and see if we can find anything.
At that point, Branson knew we were on to him. He found out the police were talking to his mother, and he ran.
Detectives believe their best lead to Harry may be the woman seen in the surveillance video with him, but they still have not been able to identify her.
We started looking for females that he could be associated with.
They discover police recently responded to a domestic dispute at Branson's residence. The victim in the report is his girlfriend, Christine Thomas.
We discovered that Christine Thomas was very short. She was like 4'11", and she matches the height description when she was standing next to the car.
So Christine's brought in for an interview.
And your name? Christine. Christine.
Do you know who I'm talking about when I say Harry?
Harry Branson.
Yeah.
We have had an on-again, off-again relationship since I got here in January.
Have you ever been to Cedar Street here in town? Do you know where Cedar Street is?
No.
I'm going to tell you that we have several videos from Cedar Street or Friday night into Saturday morning with a female that looks very similar.
It's you. Okay. I want to know why I have you at Cedar Street on film.
I don't even know where Cedar Street is.
She definitely is not being cooperative. There were quite a few questions that she totally lied.
That video shows you and Harry, okay, on Cedar Street.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm telling you, Saturday morning, we have several surveillance cameras.
It's having to be pulled out of her instead of telling the truth.
This is Jordy.
Yeah, because I've never seen the lady in my life.
It was when we showed her the picture of the Versa and her standing there next to it on the passenger side is when she realized that, we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
Would you share with me what the first thing out of your mouth was when he called you? So you said to him, what the fuck happened? What did he tell you?
Harry said, hey, we need to go check this girl I got into a fight with. She tried to rob me. So they drove down to Cedar Street where the incident occurred.
All of a sudden, she pulled a knife on her. Well,
pulled a knife on
Harry.
On Harry? Okay.
So he either went like that and pushed her or whatever, and I guess she flew over a fence.
Branson put Jordy's body in the back seat of their car. They drove out to County Road 13, and he ended up burying her body.
On April 19th, 10 days after Jordy Hudson's final moments were caught on video, detectives arrest Christine Thomas. That same day, they finally tracked down Harry Branson.
Branson had been on the run. He was hiding maybe a half a mile away in a little creek behind some people's houses.
Lucky for us, we were able to get the U.S. Marshals involved, and they were able to get him in custody.
On the way back to the station, Branson says he wants to talk.
What happened?
I about got in a fight at the Giggling Gator.
Mm-hmm.
The people I was with took cabs and left.
As an investigator, one of the greatest things that we can do with a suspect is let them talk. So instead of interrupting him, we let him tell his whole story, because eventually the evidence is going to prove otherwise.
It was the girl and some guy. They said they was going to give me a ride home.
Okay.
But we had to walk back through the neighborhood to go get the car.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, we walk around the corner and both of them pull out knives on me. Started saying, empty your pockets.
He stated that to protect himself, he ended up killing her. He was scared, he was frightened, he didn't mean to do it.
The guy hauled ass.
Okay.
He just dipped out.
After Branson was completely finished with the story, the decision was made that we would let him know we had video surveillance. Once I told him we had video surveillance of the whole crime, he put his head down, closed his eyes, and sat there for a little bit. And then after a couple of minutes of sitting there, he looked up and said, "Okay, I'll tell you the whole story."
On April 19th, 2016, 10 days after Jordy Hudson was last seen alive, St. Augustine police arrest Harry Branson for her murder. Branson originally claimed he killed Jordy in self-defense, but now he says he's ready to tell the truth about what happened.
We have the whole thing on video. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to be 100% truthful with us. Branson told us that they had left the bar, that they had been hanging out and talking, and at some point, Jordy said something to make him mad.
I don't even know what she had said, but I snapped. I completely lost it, and I don't know why or how.
He punched her in the face. And his story was that at that time, Jordy pulled the steak knife from her purse and tried to attack him.
She swung the knife at me, and I grabbed her hand and shoved it back at her, and stabbed her in the throat.
She was much smaller than him, so if he was trying to attack her, I don't know that is wrong of her to pull a knife. She may have pulled a knife, but you can't tell that from the video.
After his interview and him eventually telling us what had occurred, he agreed that he would give us the location of the body so that we could put Jordy to final rest.
Branson leads police to his property in a rural part of the county.
And you go up and you turn to the yard, there's a fire pit right over there. Under the fire pit.
Did you burn her? No.
I buried her. I freaked out. I didn't know what to do.
He told us that he had started a bonfire afterwards so that nobody would see where he had just recently dug up the ground.
All right, so she's buried right there.
Yeah.
We had the evidence technicians from the sheriff's office start coming out, and we started excavating the fire pit. Ultimately, we located Jordy Hudson. She was wrapped up in a shower curtain in the hole about 3 feet down.
Her injuries are consistent with what Branson described in his confession. But there's an additional grisly detail he failed to mention.
Apparently, he cut off her fingers to remove the rings. It was unknown if that was a robbery or just an attempt to remove rings that might have helped identify her. What really gets me is that one of those cut off fingers was shoved into one of Jordy's neck wounds.
When the results of lab tests on Branson's mother's car come in, they strengthen the case. The blood is matched to Jordy Hudson.
Officials say Branson has been charged with murder and Thomas has also been charged with accessory to murder.
Branson faces a mandatory life sentence for the murder of Jordy Hudson. But in a bid to avoid life behind bars, he pleads guilty to second-degree murder and abuse of a dead human body.
Branson is a very violent subject. He would not say why he did it. He refused to tell us what exactly she said that made him mad.
Without the video, this crime may never have been solved. We may still be here today trying to find out where Jordy's at.
On May 30th, 2017, 13 months after the murder, Harry Branson is sentenced to 50 years in prison. For her involvement in the crime, Christine Thomas pleads guilty to accessory to second-degree murder and is sentenced to 8 years in prison.
The way she passed, that's just, nobody deserves what happened to her. That's not normal. Makes you think like what you could have done, or what would, could you say something else? It weighs heavy on you. It's something I'll never forget.
To create art seemed like such a natural part of her. She was just larger than life. I regret not acquiring a piece of Jordy's art. She was one of the true originals. I just never expected for her to die, because then it's like the creativity stops,
Today was a sucky day, but at the same time, it makes me laugh so hard.
I know that if he was my boyfriend and was in love with me, I know he would be amazing. I cannot wait to see him.
I texted asking if she was okay, and she never texted back.
I asked her friends, acquaintances, anybody, if you have seen her, contact me. By 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm in full mode panic.
And then I told her, we need to go to Grand Rapids.
It was like time stood still. We knew something was wrong.
That's when I see blood. I'd yell at my girlfriend, call the cops, call the cops.
I opened the bag, and there were human limbs inside that bag.
I remember thinking, what kind of animal does this to a person?
Autumn 2018, Kalamazoo, Michigan. 31-year-old Ashley Young is pursuing her dream of becoming a language interpreter.
Ashley wanted to explore. She wanted to learn any culture. It didn't matter who you were, She was going to ask you questions and ask how your day was.
So let's talk about my morning and how amazing, and I promise none of this is exaggerated or made up. It is, you can't make this up, okay?
I always told her, you can do anything, you can be anything that you want. You just need to put your mind to it.
To make ends meet, Ashley works nights at a bank call center.
She loved that job. She was helping people with their accounts if they had questions, and she could put their mind to ease.
During the day, Ashley takes language classes at Kalamazoo Community College.
So anyways, have a good day. I really am going to go get ready for class now, and sorry for talking a lot, but that's just me.
Ashley was positive, always positive. We called her Sunshine.
Today was a sucky day, but at the same time, it makes me laugh so hard.
Ashley was always on social media. She was the light, the conscience you never knew you really needed. And the times that you were frustrated, she put it in perspective for you. Like, you could have it worse.
I hope I at least made you smile and made you realize that, your day is probably going a hell of a lot better than mine.
I met Christine in 2002. Ashley and her mom were best buddies, and I had to be that step-parent. But we made it, Ashley was just lovable and joyful.
I met Ashley the first day of 10th grade. We had a couple classes together. We had choir together. We'd sit in our car for hours just talking in her mom's driveway, listening to music, singing, and just being silly girls. And then after school, we're still inseparable.
After high school, Ashley puts her dreams of studying languages on hold. She works a series of jobs, and when she is 24 years old, she meets Moody Farran. The two quickly fall in love, and within a couple of years, are living together.
She had never really dated or been with anyone until Moody, and he was her first love. She adored him, and he adored her, and it was just like a little fairy tale.
Moody loved her, and he had already, gave her a promise ring. They were together almost 7 years.
But by 31, Ashley has decided to make big changes in her life. Not only is she in school working towards her dream job, but she also decides that it's time to end her long-time relationship.
She was trying to balance work and going to school, and they were both kind of just at a different point in their life.
After the breakup, on November 10th, 2018, she surprises her best friend Samantha with a trip to Detroit.
She took me to Detroit to go to a concert to go see Tash Sultana, an artist that I love. That trip was amazing.
This is Facebook Live, by the way.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, you look so pretty. After our concert, we just talked about life, just talked about where we were both at that time, about her and Moody, and about how she was going to be moving out. She was nervous, but it gave her something to look forward to. When she brought me home, I didn't know that was going to be the last time I ever saw her.
A week later, on November 18th, Ashley meets her mom, Christine, to begin packing up her things from the home she shares with Moody.
Her and Moody were moving out of their apartment, so we put everything into storage for her.
Ashley asks her mom to come with her at the end of the month when she'll sign the lease on a new apartment.
Ashley was beyond ecstatic about getting this apartment. Talking to her, you would have thought she was winning $1 million. You would have thought she was decorating a mansion, the way she would talk. And that was the last time I saw Ashley.
On Wednesday, November 28th, the night before Ashley is scheduled to sign her lease, she goes out for the evening. Ashley checks in with her mom, but does not say where she is headed or who she is meeting.
The last time I got a message from Ashley was at 5:55. And she said that she was almost to her destination. That's not Ashley. Ashley would say,
I'm at Walmart. Or...
Yeah, wherever she was, but she said destination.
The morning of the lease signing comes, and Christine does not hear from Ashley.
I sent her a message first thing in the morning. I'm like, where are you? Where are you? And all day. I'm not getting anything. There was something wrong. I called Ashley's work, but nobody has heard from her. And that's when it starts hitting me. Where is she? And it just snowballs from there. You're not answering. I am worried. You don't tell people where you are going. You don't have to tell me, but damn it, you need to tell someone. I need to know you're okay. You need to contact someone and let somebody know. November 30th in the morning, I called the police to file a missing persons report.
Officers talked to some people that were close to Ashley to see if they knew where she was or could account for her whereabouts, and they could not. When we get a missing person report and the person happens to be 31 years old, that could mean a number of things. Maybe the person doesn't want to be found or is just away with friends and having a good time. So it's generally not assigned to a full-blown investigation at that point.
But Ashley's loved ones have a sinking feeling something is wrong. And they know that this is all happening in the wake of a big breakup.
When she broke up with Moody, I think, Moody didn't really want it.
When somebody goes missing, especially young women, a partner or a potential partner, somebody that they know and that they trust or that they're potentially intimate with, tends to be the person that might harm them.
As the day goes on and you're not hearing anything, panic starts to set in. So I called Moody and I asked him, where is she?
Investigators catch a glimpse of Ashley's final moments.
You can see him kind of turn around, he's pointing at something, he's talking to somebody, and then eventually Ashley joins him.
And race to determine who she was with.
He seemed to be a person prone to violence and unpredictable.
Before the unthinkable happens.
I tell the dispatcher, I need officers fast.
I see a lot of death. This one stands out in my career as a horrific scene.
November 30th, 2018. 31-year-old Ashley Young has not contacted her family in more than 24 hours.
At midnight, I'm flipping out a little bit. By 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm in full mode panic. And I remember I called my supervisor. And I said, I'm not going to be in today. And she said, okay, is there anything I can do? The first words out of my mouth were pray. Just needed to pray.
Ashley's family is worried her disappearance might have something to do with her recent breakup with her boyfriend, Moody.
Prior to them actually breaking up, Ashley told me there had been a couple arguments and their relationship did hit a couple walls.
But Moody appears genuinely distraught about Ashley's disappearance.
He starts panicking because he don't know where Ashley is, and that's why he got with us in the middle of the night. Moody was right there with us, looking for her. And he was so hurt and so upset. Moody loved her, and I knew she loved him too.
When Moody provides police with information about his whereabouts for the past several days, he is cleared by law enforcement. Christine makes a plea to Ashley's friends.
I put out on Facebook that I haven't heard from her, can't get in contact with her. I asked her friends, acquaintances, anybody, if you have seen her, contact me.
Meanwhile, Christine uncovers a possible lead on Facebook.
Christine goes into her daughter's Facebook activity and is able to see that she's been communicating with a person named Jared Chance in recent days.
Jared Chance is an old friend of Ashley's.
6 years ago, they spent a lot of time together hanging out as friends. There might have been an attraction there, but Ashley was not that type because she was in that relationship with Moody. And then Jared disappeared. So she never heard from him in 6 years. During our trip to Detroit to go to the concert, she had said that he was really reaching out. They started talking more and more, and then Jared called her because he needed a ride home, and so she went and helped him. And so then he wanted to take her out as a thank you.
In the wake of her breakup with Moody, Ashley has just begun to dip her toes into the dating pool.
She was texting me about having feelings for Jared, just asking for advice on what do you think I should say? Should I say this or should I say that? And yeah, I just want to get it perfect.
Ashley leaves another friend a voicemail expressing her excitement about Jared.
Jared is so hard to read, but I know that if he was my boyfriend and he actually was in love with me, I know he would be amazing. I cannot wait to see him on Wednesday.
Wednesday, November 28th, the night Ashley vanished.
Once I found out that Ashley was with Jared, I asked if anybody had his phone number.
One of Ashley's friends does. So Christine calls Jared to see if he can help.
She asks him, "Do you know where my daughter is? Do you have any information?" And he said that they were actually together the previous night, but that she went home and that he has no idea what happened to her.
Jared said that Ashley and him had been to Mulligan's Bar in East Town, Grand Rapids. And then I told Christine, we need to go to Grand Rapids. We need to go see where she was. Follow her footsteps.
Grand Rapids is about an hour north of Kalamazoo, where Ashley lives.
Grand Rapids is a college town. It's a huge city. It's the second largest city in the state of Michigan.
Ashley's moms arrive at Mulligan's on November 30th.
So I talked with the bartender at Mulligan's, and we were able to go look at the security footage. You could see Jared and Ashley wandering around the bar. She ordered a drink. She's smiling. She's laughing. She's being Ashley. I wanted to pull her off the screen and take her home.
But the footage doesn't show her leaving the bar. Despair and desperation start sinking in for Ashley's loved ones.
It was like time stood still, in a sense, and you just had that pit in your stomach. You knew something was wrong.
And we just went driving around Grand Rapids looking for Ashley. We walked down the railroad tracks. We poked around ponds, lakes.
There was nothing. It's almost like you think you're dreaming, but you're not dreaming. Everything was a wild goose chase.
Friday, November 30th, 2018. Christine Young has had no luck finding her missing daughter, Ashley. but she has discovered that Ashley was last seen at a bar with a friend named Jared Chance on the night she disappeared. She takes what she's learned to the Grand Rapids police.
Christine Young asked for the police department to help, but if it was Jared, we need evidence, you know. You can develop theories, but theories won't get you a search warrant. Theories won't get you an arrest warrant. You need evidence. You need facts.
Frustrated, Christine reaches out again to Jared. He previously told her that he and Ashley went their separate ways after going to the bar on November 28th. She begs him to share anything else he can remember.
And that's when he told me about Demetrius.
Jared says Ashley was talking to a guy he knows named Demetrius Taylor that night at the bar. The relentless mothers track him down.
When we got there, he's like, I don't know, Ashley. I don't know your daughter at all. And he opened up his phone and showed the text messages where Jared said, hey, Ashley's mom's gonna call you, and you have to say that Ashley was just with you, and you guys were just together. And Christine was reading it, and she's like, no. Demetrius said, you can copy it, give it to the police, whatever you need to do. Even though we didn't know him, we kind of hit it off. And because he was compassionate and was understanding what Christine was going through, and he said he has kids, he understands.
After that point, I think everybody kind of knew that we just didn't get the whole story from Jared.
It just became more and more plain that Jared was trying to stall.
I had always told her that I didn't think that he was good for her. I didn't think that he necessarily had the best intentions for her, or that he knew how to be a good man.
Christine and Dana decide to head to Jared's apartment to confront him face to face. That same afternoon, a resident of downtown Grand Rapids makes a shocking discovery.
I was living in Grand Rapids on Franklin Street. 2 apartments downstairs, single father, custody of my 12-year-old daughter. My girlfriend had been complaining about a bad smell in the apartment for, about a day and a half. And me, I'm thinking, there's dead mice in the walls or something. But the smell was definitely strong. My cat runs in the basement. So I had to go to retrieve my cat. So I opened the door so the light from the day could shine down into the basement so I could see. As I go down the stairs, I see the tarp on the floor. That's when I see blood. I make it to the top of the stairs at full speed. I yell at my girlfriend, call the cops, call the cops.
I've been having a real bad smell lately. So I just went in the basement, opened the basement door, and there's a tarp, and what looks like it could be blood leaking from it. And I want the police to come here ASAP right now and look at it.
Alright, there's so-and-so lower level apartment?
Yes.
I'm not the smartest man in the world, but there's blood, there's trouble. I'm thinking I'm a father. Like, I have a daughter at home. Like, I need officers fast.
Please, sir, somebody right now, because I don't know what it is, but it looks like blood is leaking from it, and I'm not going to touch the tarp or anything like that.
GRPD showed up at that address not too long afterwards. Like most police agencies, they all have body cameras on now.
Okay. Where are we going? Share basement?
And so we're able to watch the officers go into the basement. And it's like watching a horror movie. Because they're going through this darkened basement that's lit by flashlights. They look at the tarp and see something that they will never ever forget.
Everybody back out. Just get in there. Everybody back out. Just get in there.
On December 2nd, 2018, Grand Rapids police officers make a horrific discovery in the basement of an apartment building.
I'm standing in the driveway like, oh, this can't be. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not real. This is not happening. The police asked me, can they search my house? Of course, please.
Among the officers who respond is the detective who Christine has asked for help in her search for Ashley.
By the time I got there, there were officers in front and back of the house, making sure that nobody went in or came out without us knowing it.
Okay, the tarp is laying on the stairs, the last 3 stairs.
I then entered the house, went down into the basement where this tarp was found. So this tarp was quite large and it had a zipper on it. I unzipped the bag and we then discovered the body of a woman with the arms and legs and head missing. I remember thinking, who are we dealing with here? What kind of animal does this to a person?
Police have now discovered this horrendous scene, and they know that they have a body, but all of the identifying features have been removed, so they don't know who is dead, and they don't know who potentially killed them. There's multiple occupants in this multi-dwelling residence.
Police on the third floor! Come to the door!
Who do you think they found living in the upstairs apartment?
What's your name? What's your last name? Your chance?
Jared was secured in a police car and transported to our headquarters. It didn't take long to realize that this case was going to be different than most.
I see a lot of death, all methods, and this one, it stands out in my career as a horrific scene. I went up the stairs looking for the rest of the body. When I entered the second level apartment, there was a large brown stain on the kitchen floor. I look in the bathroom and noted there wasn't a shower curtain in the bathtub. I remember looking at one of the floor vents and I pulled the grate off, and then I saw cartridges, small caliber. A lot of different areas that we found tested positive for blood. Clearly, something bad happened and somebody tried to cover it up. As we made our way out of the apartment back to the stairwell, we found a box about midway on the landing. So I start to open the box, and I see a black trash bag. I opened the bag, and there were human limbs inside that bag. There are 2 legs and there are 2 arms, and there are no hands, and there are no feet.
At that very moment, Ashley's family is headed to Jared's to confront him for sending them on a wild goose chase with Demetrius Taylor. They have no idea that it is now a crime scene.
We pulled up at 6 o'clock and the yellow tape was around Jared's house. I was screaming at the officer that was stopping us from going any further. And I'm telling him, my stepdaughter's up there. My stepdaughter was with Jared. And he said, ma'am, I can't tell you anything. And I said, well, her mom's right over there. And the only thing he could say is, go tell mom not to leave.
And I'm like, no. It can't be. It's not Ashley. It's not.
I didn't want to believe it. The police explained that they were doing DNA because it was that bad. They couldn't recognize her.
Without the confirmation from DNA, we certainly couldn't say these remains belonged to Ashley. But it was pretty clear to everybody involved that the remains were very likely to be, unfortunately, Ashley's. I just have to prove it.
Police now have the one person who can explain the gruesome scene in their custody.
So Jared was kept in our county jail, but the investigation doesn't stop. We found 2 spent .22 casings in the apartment, which led me to believe that this was a shooting. We'd also found out that Jared Chance did have a .22 caliber pistol that was now missing. So at this point, we have a body found in Jared Chance's house. At the same time, we have Jared Chance present in the house. We certainly would like to hear from Jared what happened.
Grand Rapids police have discovered female remains in the building where Jared Chance lives. They need Jared to tell them if this is Ashley Young.
Jared Chance was taken into custody and transported to our headquarters. So I asked Detective Fan and Detective Bray to attempt an interview with him.
Can you hang tight just for a sec? We'll get your cuffs up, okay? All right.
Want me to take them off, the cuffs? Or?
Yeah, you gonna be decent with us? All right.
Initially, Jared was somewhat talkative.
You guys stay busy, don't you?
Huh?
You guys stay busy, don't you?
Pretty much.
He wasn't rude. Almost seemed like it was just another day. Didn't really ask why he was there.
Thank you.
Hi, Jared.
I just recommended me to just ask for the advice of the attorney, and because I don't really know what the hell's going on, so I don't want to sit here and talk about that may incriminate me or whatever in any kind of way, because I don't know what's going on. So I just don't want to say nothing right now.
He exercised his right to counsel at that point and didn't tell us anything.
So on the evening of December 2nd, Jared is charged with the mutilation of a body and concealing a crime.
Our next step in our investigation is to utilize, every avenue we have for a timeline. We had phone records, placing them together, 28th into the 29th, and then seems the activity stopped, and her phone, in essence, just disappeared. But Ashley had been seen at a pub with Jared Chance here in the city.
By the time we found out that they were at Mulligan's, that video is gone. Local businesses don't keep all their video forever. But because of Christine's doggedness, she had already seen the video.
Hoping for additional evidence to solidify the case against Jared, investigators comb through more footage from businesses near Mulligan's.
So we did obtain video from a local business called the Pita House. and it's dated November 29th, and it's approximately 1:30 in the morning. It shows Jared walking in front of the business. There he goes right now, just kind of strolling along. And then, a few seconds later, that's Ashley there. And once again, we see Jared walk into screen, and then eventually Ashley joins him.
We know clearly from the video that Ashley is still alive. On the early morning hours of the 29th, it was crucial in trying to pinpoint what her final moments were. We also found really crucial video at a party store, Miss Tracy's, which was in essence right across the street from Jared's house. Inside the store, we see Jared Chance purchasing alcohol and ammonia, a cleaning product. We suspected that some extensive cleaning had been attempted in the apartment, and then we just so happened to have Jared buying cleaning supplies that day.
And then on one of the videos, we see that he's approaching, and we see him put something into the garbage bin right outside the front of the business. And of course, that's of interest to us.
And that led us to then the dumpster behind the party store, which happened to have Ashley's purse in it.
Based on the evidence, we were fairly confident that Jared killed Ashley in the wee hours of the 29th.
But this theory remains speculation until authorities can officially confirm the body parts found belong to Ashley.
Waiting for the DNA test was one of the worst times of my life.
I didn't want to believe, and neither did Chris. If this isn't her, then she's still out there somewhere. She's missing. So we're still looking.
Ultimately, they came back a few days later and said that all of the evidence that had any sort of blood tissue on it belonged to Ashley Young. So we knew that definitively then that Ashley Young had died.
I never thought anyone could bring that much pain to so many people. I never thought about murder.
You always see it on TV.
And it's never going to happen to us. But it does. I just want to know where the rest of Ashley is. I want to bring her home.
Investigators are also determined to find the rest of Ashley's body to help them build a stronger case against Jared. They hope his cell phone data might lead them to her.
Using cell phone records, we knew that Jared had made his way out to Holland, which is a little city just west of Grand Rapids. And that's where Jared's parents live.
Our interest in the parents was they were with Jared on the same day that we made the discovery of the body. The fact that Jared wasn't talking to us, we hoped maybe the parents would lead us, to some of the answers that we were looking for. And so we go and take a trip to Holland. James Chance, Jared's father, answered the door. I explained to him that we had a search warrant, that this was non-negotiable, that his house was going to be searched. I spent the next several hours with the Chance family while our detectives and other officers and forensic techs processed and searched their house. His father was a retired police officer, and he made a comment about, I'm glad I'm not investigating this case, that this is a tough case. And I started thinking, how do you know it's a tough case? What do you know about this?
December 5th, 2018. Investigators are at Jared Chance's family home in Holland, Michigan. They want to know if his parents have any information about Ashley Young's murder.
But they opted not to speak about specifics without consulting an attorney.
While Jared's parents are tight-lipped, the scene inside their home speaks volumes.
A sawzall was found in that house. There was tissue observed on the blade.
In the Honda CR-V, which was in the garage, we found a small trace of blood.
They also located a bloody shower curtain that also was connected to Jared's apartment in Grand Rapids.
The evidence throughout the home convinces investigators that Jared's parents helped him cover up his crimes.
It was a shocking revelation for all of us.
Within 3 to 4 hours, Jared Chance is charged with murder, and his parents are charged with being accessories after the fact in the mutilation of a body.
We learned that they drove to Grand Rapids on Saturday, December 1st. Jared loaded some boxes into their Honda. Jared got in the car, and they proceeded then to return to Holland. One of the main goals is trying to locate Ashley's head, hands, and feet. I appealed to them as parents, trying to get them to consider how Ashley's family was feeling. And essentially I got very little. Jared seemed to be a person prone to violence and unpredictable.
He seemed to be a troubled young man that had a lot of various problems and couldn't hold a job, didn't have very close connections to friends and family.
Ashley wants to fix people, and I think that that's what she saw in Jared. She was the one person who actually wanted to believe in him and push him to do better.
Ashley believed there's always good in everyone. But what she didn't realize is there's not always good in everyone.
What changed? What flipped? From the minute that they were at that bar and having the night that they had to what he did to her in a basement.
The burning question, what happened in the final moments between Ashley and Jared, remains pure speculation.
I think he made a pass at her. That was my first instinct. And she rejected him. And then I think he killed her.
The trial begins today for a man accused of murdering and dismembering a Kalamazoo County woman.
Whether it was showing these horrific photos to the jury, listening to the forensic techs who had to open up this box and find Ashley's limbs, throughout the entire process, Jared showed zero emotion the entire time.
Now the trial is in the hands of the jury.
The defendant is, under count 1, guilty of second-degree murder. Under count 2, guilty of tampering with evidence.
Ultimately, the jury convicted Jared Chance of second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, of mutilating a body, of failure to report a death. Every single charge that was before them, they convicted him of.
Jared Chance is sentenced to 100 to 200 years. When the sentencing was handed down, her mother got in front of this entire courtroom.
I cry 7 days a week. 7! Jared Chance, I hate you. I want to rip you limb from limb.
Jared's parents now must face justice.
Barbara Chance decides to take a plea, and she actually only serves 45 days in jail. But the father, James, decides to take it to trial. James Chance is acquitted of perjury, but is convicted of an accessory after the fact. So he gets a year of probation, including 1 month of jail.
If they would tell us where the rest of Ashley is, we could bring her home. They owe that to her family. They owe that to her friends.
Unfortunately, I don't believe that they ever will. I don't think they'll give us that.
So anyways, have a good day. I really am going to go get ready for class now, and sorry for talking a lot, but that's just me.
If you were lucky enough to have Ashley in your life, and she considered you a friend, you know the loss. You know what you lost.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
When that family was entering the house, he heard the gunshots.
911. Someone just shot another. Who shot them? We don't know.
There was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
Sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed.
December 2003, Sugar Land, Texas. Kent and Tricia Whitaker and their two sons, Bart and Kevin, have called this affluent suburb home for more than a decade. It's a perfect fit for their upscale lifestyle.
Sugar Land was an amazing place to grow up. It was a community focused on faith, focused on friendships, relationships, a really tight-knit community. The Whitaker family was a pillar in the community. I attended a private school there in Sugar Land, and Kevin did too, and we were fast friends. The Whitaker family did so much together, whether it be fishing trips or camping trips, times on the lake. Kent and Tricia maintained that really sweet closeness with their kids and that high level of trust and communication. They loved to experience life as a family.
I was the Whitakers' next door neighbor. They were very normal, kind, empathetic people. They seemed not troubled, unburdened. Life is good. That was my general vibe.
To friends and neighbors, the Whitakers seem to have it all. A happy family where 19-year-old Kevin looks up to his 23-year-old brother, Bart.
Kevin was very humble. He was a man of integrity, of character, incredibly honest. The guy was smart, very engaging. Bart was a little bit more quiet. You didn't know necessarily what he was thinking like you did Kevin.
Kent Whitaker is the co-owner of a thriving construction company. A hard worker, his financial success means he can provide his family with everything they might want. His wife, Tricia, is a dedicated part-time elementary school teacher.
She loved and knew every kid in every class every single year. And the interesting part was that she didn't have to work, right, because of Kent's job. But it told you a lot about her heart.
On December 10th, 2003, Kent and Tricia plan a special night out for the family to celebrate Bart's graduation from Sam Houston State University. At dinner, they present their son with a $4,000 Rolex watch as a graduation gift.
I know what a Rolex costs, and he bought a Rolex as a graduation gift. That's not an everyday thing.
Kent is a proud dad and takes photos so they'll have a permanent record of Bart's achievement.
I've seen these. I've seen those. Sitting there smiling like that. Very happy.
It's the last time you see pictures of all of the family together.
Someone just shot a neighbor. Who shot them? We don't know.
I was there when they died. That was real, and I can't necessarily make sense of what I saw that night. I was sitting at my computer. I heard gunshots. I immediately dart out the front door. I get about midway down our sidewalk, and I see Kent Whitaker laid on his back. You could see his body lit up by their front porch lights. And he was saying, Brandon, we've been shot. Call 911.
What kind of injuries do they have? I don't know. They've just been shot.
Brandon's father, Cliff Stanley, rushes to the house and discovers that Kent Whitaker has been shot in the chest.
My dad runs out and starts rendering aid. Multiple trips, back and forth with towels, just doing what we can. It felt awful. It was gruesome. It was a horror movie.
While police race to the scene, another 911 call comes from inside the Whitaker home. It's Bart Whitaker.
I've been shot. Where is your wound? In the arm, my shoulder. I think I can't in my arm. Okay, who else has been shot in the house with you? It's my mom and my dad and my brother. Oh, God, I can't. I need you to hang on, Bart. I've got help on the way, okay? Do you know who shot you? No. Dark in here. Okay, when he left, Bart, did he leave out your back door? Yeah, I kicked him that way.
When I arrived on scene, it was very chaotic. There was ambulances, there were multiple police cars, fire trucks, a helicopter.
When detectives arrive at the Whitaker home, they find Kent Whitaker hanging on to life.
EMS personnel had went in. They had taken vitals for Kevin Whitaker, and he was pronounced deceased. Patricia Whitaker was flown by helicopter to a Houston hospital, and we were told she died en route to the hospital. Bart Whitaker had been shot. He was being medically treated by EMS. 2 people were shot. Another 2 people were dead. So we knew within the first hour that it was a double murder.
Kent Whitaker and his son Bart are rushed to a nearby hospital. Detectives quickly arrive to get a statement from Bart, since he is the only one conscious. Bart tells them that the family had just arrived home from their celebratory dinner when he realized he forgot something.
Bart Whitaker had reported that he had actually walked out to his truck to retrieve a cell phone. But when the rest of the family was entering the house, there was a guy that was inside that house. So he heard the gunshots. Bart reported he had chased the shooter through the home and out the back of the house. And he had actually been shot by the offender. We had had several home invasion robberies. So the thought initially was, are they connected? Was this just a home invasion that went bad?
But something doesn't quite add up.
Probably the biggest thing that stuck out to us was every drawer in the rooms were pulled out exactly even with each other.
So this burglar basically purposely, I'm going to pull out every drawer about this, so it'll make it look like I was trying to look for stuff. But you weren't looking for anything. You were just pulling out drawers. The officers immediately knew that.
To the investigators, the scene seems to have the hallmarks of a staged burglary. Nothing appears to have been stolen.
There were electronics, there were computers, there was TVs. There was a Rolex watch that was found. There didn't appear to be anything taken. So things didn't add up exactly to being some type of burglary.
Burglars come in and leave within minutes. They smash everything they can, pick up everything in 3 minutes. That's what happens. They don't sit there and wait for people to come home and walk in through the front door and shoot them. It just doesn't happen.
While investigators try to make sense of why the Whitakers were gunned down, they realize they have another pressing matter in front of them.
We had a vague description of a dark figure that ran up through the back of the house. And now this person is loose in the neighborhood. So are they on foot? Did they get picked up by a car? Did they drive a car there and now they've driven away? Or are they hiding in someone's backyard and they've already shot 4 people? The public's in danger, and we were in a very tough spot. Where is he, or where could he be?
Police try to unravel a bewildering attack.
I crawled around for a bit. I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong.
And discover details of an inconceivable plot.
I was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting? Who did the shooting?
All the puzzle pieces just immediately connected, and realizing, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
As police in Sugar Land, Texas begin investigating the shooting at the Whitaker home, news travels fast in the tight-knit community.
I got a call from a friend. He's like, hey, there's been an incident. There's been a shooting. It was Kevin who had passed away, and Trisha had passed away as well. It was the most horrendous thing possible. And so at that moment, there's so much happening, you can't reconcile anything. You can't process, you can't grieve. It's just all hell's broken loose. December 10th, 2003 was a day that is burned in my memory.
I don't feel like I ever did process it. I just kind of did what I had to do and kept moving forward. It was just shocking. Sugar Land is incredibly safe. It's the kind of place where you don't even hesitate to take a walk at 3 a.m. They definitely made me more aware of my surroundings, of what's capable from people.
You know, the first question is what happened? What went down? And then why?
Detectives are urgently pursuing those answers at the Whitaker home. As they search through the house, they find a weapon and 4 empty shell casings.
There was a gun that was found in the kitchen area, which was odd. It's probably the murder weapon. Usually we don't find that the offender leaves the murder weapon on the scene. But it was an advantage for us because now we had the possibility maybe for fingerprints, for DNA, for other types of evidence that could be recovered from this gun. In one of the upstairs rooms, nothing in that room appeared to be touched at all, except for there was a small gun safe. It had been pried open. You could see pry marks around the frame. It was empty.
The gun safe was a small little box, maybe a foot by foot, tucked into a hidden area. Whoever did this knew what to look for and knew what was in the safe.
The discovery leads the investigators to question how familiar the killer was with the Whitaker family and their home.
It was odd that someone had targeted this small gun safe out of this whole big house. Why weren't the computers disturbed? Why weren't the TVs taken? It just didn't make sense. So our job was to try to find out how many people were involved with this.
Most people are killed by people who know them. 78, 80%. It's very strange you have stranger on stranger. It just doesn't occur that much.
Three days after the murders, police are still scouring the evidence for leads on a motive or suspect when Bart Whitaker is discharged from the hospital. His father, Kent, is still in intensive care. Despite the trauma he's just endured, Bart agrees to assist detectives by returning home to relive that terrifying night. The investigators hope he can remember something that will lead them to the killer.
It's 7:54 p.m. Officer DuBose is going to be playing the part of the suspect, and I'm turning it over to Bart for his direction of everyone.
We went through the crime, trying to figure out exactly what happened.
I was here when I was calling 911. I might have fallen forward.
Okay.
Right after I was shot.
Okay.
I crawled around for a bit. It felt... I really didn't know where I was hit. It just felt wrong. I mean, I couldn't move. My arm, I tried to push off before, and my arm wasn't working. I thought maybe I was hit in the side because it burned.
So he went out the back door? Did you see him leave that back door?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't remember.
They had him reenact the scene. And people generally, when it comes to crimes, they try to be very specific. Like he was standing here or something like that. And his was, well, I don't remember. It was this way or could have been this way.
When the shot was fired, did you see any flashes of light?
I don't remember.
You ever physically make contact with the suspect?
I don't think so. Okay. I don't know what I was trying to do. I know I was just trying to grab him. I think I got to him.
He was very vague about things you'd think he would remember.
At that point, we had no leads. We had just a family of 4 that had been shot, 2 that were deceased.
They came home at the wrong time, in the wrong place. That's the story that you typically hear, right? That's the initial reaction. It's just incredibly unfortunate, right? How does this even occur in Sugar Land?
Detectives investigating the murders of Tricia Whitaker and her son Kevin in Sugar Land, Texas, believe their killer was familiar with the Whitaker home and may not have been trying to rob them.
So we started doing a background on the family. The domestic relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker was nothing but perfect that we could find out. And every friend or family that we had interviewed said they had a great relationship.
Detectives turned their focus on the Whitakers' murdered son, 19-year-old Kevin.
Was he targeted for some reason? Was he involved in something that he shouldn't have been? But he had no criminal history. As we were interviewing friends and family members, Kevin seemed to be a good kid, and he was a tragic victim.
Detectives also take a closer look at the other Whitaker son, 23-year-old Bart, who was wounded in the attack and is their primary witness. It was his graduation from college that was being celebrated shortly before the murders.
Bart was supposed to graduate that coming Saturday. So we contacted Sam Houston State University, and we were told he wasn't graduating. As a matter of fact, he was a freshman as far as their academic rating, and he had like a 1.4 GPA. So we had a story that he was giving us that wasn't matching reality.
He was lying about going to school for the past 3 years. And so they zeroed in on him.
It sure seemed at the time it was too coincidental that this big family event had occurred, and then they get home from this event and they're all shot. So was Bart involved with what had happened? Was he not involved? We had to gather evidence.
Investigators want to keep what they've learned about Bart Whitaker under wraps until they can either clear him or tie him to the murders. But a local newspaper covering the case has also learned of his deceit and runs the story. Bart's father, Kent, still recovering in the hospital, is stunned and can't understand why Bart would lie.
Kent's response to it was, why didn't he tell us this? I just wish he would have, let the music stop and confess this to us.
How could you not know your kid's not going to college? So you sit there and think, what kind of relationship did they actually have?
Six days after the murders of his mother and brother, Bart and his father join more than 1,000 friends and family at the funeral.
Gosh, that was a brutal day. I remember seeing Kent and Bart sitting on the front row and watching them and, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? Just gutted for them and heartbroken for them.
We had multiple detectives that were there. We had actually had some recording devices that were placed around the area because there could be comments made. Because sometimes the parties involved go to the funerals, but we didn't find anything at all.
As the family mourns, Sugar Land police continue to focus on the questions that have arisen about Bart.
We had discovered that Bart had some involvement with the criminal justice system already. We found a 2001 incident report from the Waco Police Department that there was a female subject that was in an apartment with Bart Whitaker, and she overheard him talking about wanting to kill his dad. We had an officer that actually went out to the house. It was early in the morning and made contact with both Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker and told them why he was there. But they didn't believe Bart would be involved with something like that.
Later on, when the father finally talks, he says, we're just talking about the Menendez brothers. It wasn't anything serious at all. And so the father just believes him. And that's it.
In the days after the murders, life seems to return to some semblance of normalcy for Bart and his father, at least from the outside.
And they were still living in the same house together where two of their family members died, and the suspicion is growing that Bart was involved.
And it wasn't life as normal, but from the outside, it was a dad and a son who had gone through this tragic event, locking arms and leaning into one another.
We had to determine how much are we going to tell Mr. Whitaker, because his life still could be in jeopardy with Bart still being around. And we didn't tell him everything. We tried to be as honest as we could with him.
There were maybe a few times that Kent would say, hey, they're still trying to find the guy, or they're still looking into it.
Mr. Whitaker was in a very hard position at that point. Slowly, kind of the bow's starting to unravel here, where there's information about his only living son that, at least initially, isn't adding up.
Police know Bart Whitaker didn't pull the trigger, but they strongly suspect he is involved in the murders of his family.
Bart was very manipulative with friends, and that was information that we received as the investigation went on. That's when the intensity ramped up into trying to identify who does he currently hang around with And where were they at on December 10th of 2003? This is not the all-American family that everybody might think they are.
Detectives in Sugar Land, Texas suspect Bart Whitaker knows more than he's saying about the murders of his mother and brother, and in fact, may be involved in the crime. But they have been unable to find any solid evidence supporting their suspicions. Then, a week after the murders, as investigators contemplate their next move, an unexpected visitor drops by the police station.
The lead detective was at the police station late one night, and there was a knock on the back door. It was a gentleman by the name of Adam Hipp.
Adam Hipp tells the detective that he briefly went to college with Bart Whitaker, and he wants police to know that Bart's statement about killing his parents in 2001 was far from the joke he claimed it was.
He said, listen, Bart Whitaker talked to me about killing his family before, back in 2001.
Adam tells police that Bart claimed once his parents and brother were dead, he would receive all of the family's assets, including their home and life insurance policies worth over $1 million. He says Bart offered him a cut if he would be his trigger man.
The detective had Mr. Hipp actually draw a map that showed where he was supposed to stand inside the house, and he would shoot the family members as they walked in. And that's exactly what happened on December 10th, 2003. Adam Hipp started working for us. We had him make recorded phone calls with Bart Whitaker to get him to talk about the crime.
Detectives coach Adam to tell Bart he knows he killed his parents, and then threaten to go to the police with this information unless he receives $20,000.
And that's when Bart Whitaker says, yeah, I can pay you. I can pay you some money, basically.
Bart never really came out directly and said, I did it, but there were enough indicators there.
In my opinion, we had probable cause to arrest Bart Whitaker on basis of what we had with Adam Hipp coming in. We did have that. Do we have enough to prosecute him and convict him? No. We didn't have any of the details.
But Adam Hipp's call to Bart points the investigators to someone else who may be able to help them build their case.
When Adam Hipp is on the phone, Bart Whitaker mentions Chris Brashear. And what is Bart Whitaker? Chris is going to keep his mouth shut.
Adam tells police that Chris Brashear is a former roommate of Bart's. Detectives track down Chris and bring him in for questioning.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you coming down. Yeah, man.
After establishing the relationship between Bart and Chris, detectives hone in on the night of the murder.
Do you have any idea who did the shooting? Who did the shooting? Yeah, any ideas at all?
And I mean, it's a pretty gross incident to me. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, it's kind of a blunt question.
Has Bart ever approached you about killing his family?
No.
He's never talked to you about that or anything like that? No. Never even joked around about it?
No.
So, did you go anywhere that night?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Went to, what's that place? Hooters?
Hooters?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was you and Steven?
It was, yeah, Steven, his girlfriend, and myself, yeah.
Investigators believe that Chris Brashear is lying to them. They learn that Steven is Steve Champagne, another former roommate of Bart's. And if Chris is providing Steve as a false alibi, detectives consider whether he might be involved as well.
Steve Champagne is enlisted in the Marines. We're looking at cell phone records, financial records. So who is communicating with who?
Police quickly locate Steve and bring him in for questioning.
Now, they say they don't know anything about it. They denied anything. So at least that's where they start.
Finally, as pressure grows, the story begins to change.
I think Steve Champagne, his conscience finally got to him. Then he let out a little information about when maybe I was involved.
Do you feel partly responsible?
Oh, yeah. Steve Champagne changed his story and confessed.
Steve tells the detectives that Bart convinced him and Chris Brashear to join a plot to kill his family, so he could inherit his parents' fortune. Steve admits he was the getaway driver, and Chris Brashear was the trigger man.
He had taken Chris Brashear over to the house, parked his car a street or two over behind the house. Chris hid inside the house and shot the family members as they walked in on December 10th of 2003.
Did Chris say where he found the gun in the house?
No, I remember hearing something about a safe or something like that, but I don't know for sure.
Who do you think is the most responsible?
Probably Chris for shooting them. I mean, Bart planning it, yeah.
The big piece of information, evidence-wise, that Steve was able to provide to us is they had a bag that had a lot of evidence from the crime, walkie-talkies, water bottle, ammunition, that they tossed into Lake Conroe.
This is a big lake, man-made lake. They throw that in there. Now, what would be the odds of somebody being able to find that?
Steve Champagne, a suspect in the murders of Tricia and Kevin Whitaker, claims a bag full of crucial evidence was tossed into Lake Conroe, 50 miles north of Houston, and agrees to take police to the spot.
The police department with their scuba tank, they go out and look for it. In water, you can't see your hand in front of you. They found the damn thing.
Inside the bag, detectives find the tool used to break into the Whitakers' gun safe.
They even found the pry bar, and they managed to match it up by the scrape marks. They even found the cell phone they were using. Now, you tell me what kind of police work that is. God bless.
There was DNA that was recovered. That was Chris Brashear's from a water bottle. There was ammunition that was consistent with the ammunition that was involved that killed the family. Tangible physical evidence that links these individuals to this crime.
With the evidence now in hand, detectives have what they need to confront Bart. But he's nowhere to be found.
Bart Whitaker's Tahoe was found abandoned in an apartment complex in Houston. Both of the doors were found open. We sent detectives to the scene. We believe he's on the run.
We just lost him. People don't run when they're innocent. They really don't. Flight is a very good indication of guilt.
Kent Whitaker told us that there was money that was taken from the house. So Bart had some money to survive. Our job was now to figure out where he was.
The news of Bart's disappearance is one more shock for his friends and family, already devastated by the murders.
That was the big kind of aha moment, was when Bart left. So that's really when everything, all the puzzle pieces just immediately connected. And I realized, gosh, the worst possible explanation for this is true.
It's too much to really break it down into a coherent single thought. Shock, disgust, and disbelief almost. that someone could plot and plan out something like this.
Police send out a nationwide alert to be on the lookout for Bart Whitaker. With the cash taken from his home, he could be anywhere. Meanwhile, Steve Champagne and Chris Brashear are charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of Tricia and Kevin Whitaker.
These were kids that came from great backgrounds, but were manipulated by Bart Whitaker to kill his family. And they went along with it because Bart had promised them a cut in his inheritance. And he had told them that, hey, it's going to take a little while, but I am going to give you some money.
For months, there are no leads to Bart's whereabouts.
So we worked with Crime Stoppers to put out that we were looking for the whereabouts of Bart Whitaker.
There's a Crime Stoppers award of $10,000. If you get information that leads to this arrest, we'll pay you $10,000.
18 months after the murders, police get a call from a man named Rudy Rios.
Rudy Rios said that he had known Bart Whitaker and he knew where Bart Whitaker was because Bart Whitaker had assumed his identity and he went to Mexico.
Rudy Rios claims Bart paid him $3,000 to be transported to Mexico, and that Bart has been living there for more than a year.
Bart Whitaker shacks up with a female and begins a relationship with her.
Mexican officials agree to cooperate with American law enforcement. Almost 2 years after the murders, they track Bart down, and on September 24, 2005, he is returned to the U.S.
We call up Ken Whitaker and said that he's going to be getting out of Mexico, but there was no deals made whatsoever. They just got him out. Put him back here and put him in jail. We had already made a decision. The only person we were seeking the death penalty was the mastermind, Bart Whitaker.
But Bart's defense attorneys work to thwart the possibility of a death sentence. At the heart of their strategy is Kent Whitaker.
Mr. Whitaker did not want the state of Texas to put his son to death, which is usually just kind of a reverse of roles where the family wants the maximum.
To forgive somebody of doing the most horrendous thing possible serves as a model of forgiveness. Something I think about all the time.
His standard was, I believe he's changed, and I'm going to forgive him. My standard is, he hasn't changed, and you can't forgive him.
All rise.
Bart Whitaker's capital murder trial begins on March 3, 2007, some 3.5 years since the killings at his family's home.
In my opening statement, I told the jury panel, you're about to hear a tale of subterfuge, deception, and greed, which will lead you to one conclusion, that Bart Whitaker had his family murdered. And that's the only conclusion he got.
Prosecutors put admitted getaway driver Steve Champagne on the stand. He explains how Bart outlined his murder for cash scheme.
The conversation was about when the family came back from eating dinner and Chris would be in the house and shoot them.
The jury hears that Bart staged a fight with the gunman, and they'd agreed in advance Bart would be shot in the arm to divert suspicion. The trial lasts 6 days before the case goes to the jury on March 8, 2007. They deliberate for just an hour and a half before coming to a unanimous decision.
The guilty verdict was very quick.
Now the jury must decide whether Bart Whitaker should live or die.
Call your next witness. Bart Whitaker. He needs to be sworn, gentlemen.
Bart didn't testify during his trial, but now, in the penalty phase, makes a last-ditch effort to save his life.
Please stand before the clerk and be sworn.
Bart Whitaker has been convicted of murdering his mother and brother. Now he's trying to convince the jury not to sentence him to death.
When Bart Whitaker was testifying, I actually had the defendant admit that he had no reason to hate his parents, but he did it anyway.
The only people I've ever hated, and I know it was not for the right reasons, but the only people I ever hated were my parents and my brother.
The prosecutor confronts Bart with his family's final moments, the photos taken by his father at the celebration for Bart's supposed graduation. He tells the jury one photo from that night is particularly disturbing.
He shoots a finger at him while he's doing it. Now, some people don't make that much of it. I'm sitting there going, do you understand something? He's shooting a finger at him knowing they're going to be dead. It's very chilling.
The jury deliberates for 10 hours before sentencing Bart Whitaker to death.
It's a hard question, and people have a lot of opinions about it because they're removed from it. But when you know the people and you've been involved with them, and definitely as intimately involved with this entire murder as I was, you see things a little different. Because I believe Bart should have received the death penalty.
Bart's accomplices agree to plea deals. Triggerman Chris Brashear is sentenced to life behind bars, and Steve Champagne, the getaway driver, receives a lighter 15-year sentence for cooperating as a key witness.
How do you even begin to broach that conversation with someone? Like, there's no icebreaker for, hey, will you help me kill my family? It's brought me to the conclusion that evil is real, very tangible, and it has a long plan behind it, and I truly think Bart was evil.
Over the next decade, Kent Whitaker remarries and builds a new life. He continues to fight to get his son's death sentence commuted.
Kent Whitaker never said he was okay with what Bart did. He always said he should be punished, okay? But he didn't like us seeking the death penalty. That was it.
When Bart's appeals are exhausted, his execution is scheduled for 6 p.m. on February 22nd, 2018. Then, with just 30 minutes until Bart is set to die, Texas Governor Greg Abbott grants him clemency.
And left, and I found on the news that they commuted his life.
I'll never forget the night that the news came out. I never forget that moment of seeing Kent break down. Man, it was over a decade of emotions. For me, I was on the side of commuting the sentence. Should he ever see the light of day? Absolutely not. That's a no-brainer.
One day, Kent's going to die. And Bart will have no one left fighting for him, talking to him, coming to see him. And he'll have to live the rest of his life suffering like that. So I think he would have gotten off easy with the death penalty in this regard.
Trisha was gold. I find myself getting emotional thinking back to her. She cared for us. She loved us. She was invested in our lives. I miss Trisha dearly. I'm gutted that Kevin is gone. You know, Kevin was not a typical 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old, right? He wasn't a typical high schooler. He was always wiser than us. There was something in the yearbook our senior year. It was most likely to succeed, most athletic. His was who was the best, most humble, highest integrity human being, and it was Kevin. I started thinking about where would Kevin be now? I think that's what I still probably grieve, is not having that friendship for life.